Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome from cloudy Berlin, Germany, another Virtual Ops 2020 session. Today we talk about the new mindset in the new not normal. We invited all the champions from earlier sessions and we are going to have a panel discussion. So there's no presentation in general today. I'm going to moderate the session, and it will be interesting to know what all the attendees believe is the new mindset and what is required to have this new mindset in the new normal. So I suggest that we are starting with a short introduction session of every attendee. And Anne, maybe we start with you in Sweden.
Yes, hello everybody. Anne Cederhall. I have a long past in distribution, mainly in airlines, and also have worked for several systems. I've worked both commercial and also in airline IT. So hello everybody. Pleasure to be here, Daniel.
Jasenka, let's go to the island called Great Britain.
Wow, that's a difference, a little bit different. Hi, I am the founder of Astute Aviation, based in London, and Astute Aviation is dedicated to improve the way airlines manage and measure and plan operations, their overall operations, so that the gap between strategy and operation becomes as small as possible, and that minimizes changes in planned operations. So, and of course, it's all linked with complexity of doing the business in complex context. So I describe this in my books, Beyond Airline Disruptions, in particular in the second edition. I blog about it, and I published a number of interviews with the free thinkers, people who are with open minds, and that includes Daniel. And before I decided to go that way, I worked for a number of airlines and actually went through for a software company to add, and actually I've was directly involved in almost every part of the planning process, and that's it in brief, because it would be a long story if I continue. Yeah, that's about me. So
thank you, Jasenka, for this very brief introduction. I loved it.
I know.
Fatima, let's go to Portugal.
Yeah, it was brief.
Okay, so I think I'll be short. But my name is Fatima Pina, so I'm from Portugal. I've been working for the last, let's say, 25 years in the IT industry, mainly business intelligence and analytics. I've been working also not only with the airlines, but also airlines and airports, especially for Portuguese territory and also Spain territory in the airport area. Nowadays, I'm also focused in other industries, but mainly for analytics and business intelligence. I would say that the focus that has been in our portfolio has been more related to the fuel optimization and monitoring, and especially the reduction of CO2 and emissions. And this has been most my focus lately. But this is Portuguese market and Spanish market nowadays. And that's it, I think.
Let's keep going with another Portuguese-speaking country. Let's go to Brazil. Gabriela.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Gabriela, and I'm from Brazil. I work for Latam Airlines. I will complete 10 years at Latam Airlines tomorrow, actually. Wow. And yes, and before of it, I worked for TAM Airlines, a Brazilian company, for 2 years. And basically my career is always at the OCC, working in the operational control center of those airlines. And currently I am part of the project team. We are working in a huge technology and process transformation in the operational control center. So I am really looking to hear Jasenka. I watched the previous sessions and it was amazing. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, let's move further now. Let's go to Canada. Christine. Christine, you are muted. Then let's stay in Canada. Steve.
Good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you happen to be. It's early afternoon here in Toronto, so I'll stick with good afternoon. Steve Bogie. I have spent probably a good part of my career, I won't say how long, Daniel and I had this debate last week on Length of Service, working within, I'll call it the Air Canada family. I started my career with the regional affiliates and mainly in the operations side. In fact, I ran OCC and through, if any of you remember the Air Canada Canadian Airlines merger, I actually consolidated the regional SOC centers, 4 SOC centers into one. And shortly after that, moved into a bit of an IT role where I've been for the last 15 years. And for the most part, working with the various business units, particularly the operational groups, on IT solutions. So, I say to people, I had the best of both worlds. I got to play in IT and I got to play in airline operations, in my mind, two of the kind of coolest things going. And I've recently left Air Canada and started my own consulting firm. So that's it.
So in the second try, Christine, are you online now? Yes, you are.
I am. Sorry about that, guys. So I am also from Canada. Steve, have you gone back out to Vancouver, or you're in Toronto still?
Steve is in Toronto, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, in Toronto.
So I'm a little bit east of there in Montreal, and I recently left Air Canada after almost 20 years in the with that air operator. I spent most of that time dedicated to maintenance in tech writing and business processes. And the last year I was responsible for maintenance, but more from a global perspective within the all over operation. I reported to someone who was not responsible for in-flight or IT, but he was responsible for a great deal of other areas. So that's me.
Christophe, are you ready to speak?
Yes, I'm ready to speak. Sorry about that. I was a bit late. So I'm from France. You can guess it with my accent.
Montreal.
Today I started a new life. I've been working in the aviation business for the past 25 years, roughly. So I started with Air France. I worked with BA, TAT, French airline, and after that, I was working for a company called RM Rocade, which we sold to Sabre, and I stayed with Sabre for about 8 years, guessing what I would do in a large corporate environment. Well, we did a lot. I mainly worked on CSR and revenue management and all this stuff, so it was kind of interesting and challenging. I've been traveling a lot. I just realized, checking my miles, that Greta Thunberg would kill me if she saw that I travel 3 times the distance from Earth to Moon, and I'm on my way to Mars, actually. So, and today I started a new job. I work for the French government, and I'm in charge of evangelizing researcher to create startups that would have impact on environment or that kind of things. And so I joined in a public role, actually, and it was my first day today. So I don't know what the new world of tomorrow or yesterday is, but it looks like the researcher I did talk to today, young people, they were not very inclined of flying. And when I told them that I've been flying a lot, I thought they would kill me next time I would meet them. But so that's it.
Christian.
Hello, everybody. I think I'm the disruptive person in this round because I've never worked in flight ops. I've been now nearly 20 years in the industry, always on the cargo side, but I'm very thankful for actually Daniel introducing me to this great audience and also to our products related to flight ops. And I'm having worked in cargo also at IATA and in different roles driving initiatives, digital transformation initiatives. I never came across any interaction actually with flight ops, and I want to now build this bridge actually between cargo and flight ops, because I think the new normal should be not working in silos but connecting both sides within an airline and build on the synergies.
Abhilash, let's go to Inya.
Yeah, hi Daniel. So hi guys, great to be here. I'm Abhilash. I'm working in a company called Frost & Sullivan. We are a research and consulting firm, and I'm in charge of the airline and airport industry. And I'm interested in the digital solutions which are happening and the digital disruptions happening in the industry. So yeah, this will be a great insight for me to gain how the industry is going in that direction. So great to be here.
Martin. We have only one Martin today on the call. Very easy for me.
Good. Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Sedlacek, and by nationality, I'm Czech. So I'm coming from the ops environment. I started with Czech Airlines at the OCC, later worked for EasyJet in OCC Flight Dispatch. And in 2014, so 6 years ago, I joined Lufthansa Consulting, still focused on the topic. At the moment, I lead something what we call Solution Group Flight Operations and Safety Management. And yeah, I primarily work on the projects which are focused either on the OCC or operational excellence programs. And lately also a lot on kind of merger and acquisitions projects, but from the operations perspective, because believe it or not, those things can also make your operations really, really complex. And that's where we are trying to connect dots together, and where I think it will be even more important in the near future if the consolidation still takes the speed.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I think it's a great lineup. We have plenty of Virtual Ops 2020 guest speakers. We have country presenters from the Virtual Happy Hour. We have thought leaders in our industry. And I remember very well when on 24th of June, we kicked off the Virtual Ops 2020 season with a session about the new mindset from Martin. Then we had the session with Jasenka, collaborate to disrupt disruptions. And Steve presented last week the new not normal. And so for me, it would be interesting to get your views. We are now 6 months in this pandemic. We have our thoughts about what is necessary to change. And I was asking Martin last week when Steve presented whether something has already changed. I think your conclusion, Martin, was not really. Not really. And Steve was also pretty pessimistic in his State of the Union, the new not normal. And so maybe starting with Christoph, you just changed your job. And when you're hearing about the new mindset and your experience, and you worked for so many airlines, is it something which will come soon, a new mindset, and will be change coming to the industry, or airlines are continuing to work like they worked since centuries?
Well, I think when I joined the airline business, and over the past 30 years, I always thought that the aviation business was very innovative. And when I started my last company, a startup company, I realized that research in aviation or airlines do not really exist. Algorithm we invented for revenue management date from 1972. When we talk about all this regression, logistic regression and logit stuff in network planning, it's something which exists in mathematics in the 50s. And research is not really part of our culture because we think we do some. And my vision of airlines is that it has to be well structured. it has to work globally. So and for that, you need to make compromise between having innovative startups or airlines which could be able to fly in the middle of nowhere. So I think there is a first thing that research is different. And when I see researchers today, they are looking for what would happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And when I talk to aviation executives, and I did talk to a few executives over the past year, they mainly focus, or over the past 6 months even, the question is, when do I come back to normal? And when will I come back to passenger figures of 2019? That's the question. And around that, they build a strategy. But when I ask some leaders, do you guys have a vision? What would be a passenger in 10 years? What would be the travel business in 5, 10, 20 years? Some of them have some vision, but I think they just need to execute things on a daily basis, and it's crisis management. And when you see most of the airlines today, some low-cost airlines like Wizz, I think they got a vision to expand open bases and so on. But if you see most of the airlines, the only vision they have is survival and cutting costs today. So it's when we see most of I think Delta announced yesterday that they will suppress 2,000 pilots' job. Air France has announced maybe less, but it's all about execution like that. And what I think is, in this new normal, the new normal may not be the previous normal, but this new normal may be something we need to invent, to reinvent. And we can have a lot of intellectual discussions around it, but so far, but from what I saw, because I do not read everything, and globally we don't know everything, the same question came around: is how can we do business as usual? I'm also teaching, and I'm teaching in India. So Saturday I was teaching at the IIM in Bangalore, and we have an MBA specialized in aviation aerospace, and students are mainly pilots or chief pilots profiles or airlines executive. And I got a question from one guy who is an executive at GoAir in India, and they sacked the CEO last week, and he was asking me, do you think if someone would be the new CEO of the airline, what kind of impact it would have on recovering the airline? And I just responded to him, is that an impact you want to have for shareholders by end of this year? And he said, yes. And I think, how do you want to change things? In this case, just talk to Indigo and sell the airline, because it just have 8% market share.
That's a very clever suggestion. So, is it not now again also an excuse with the low traffic? Okay, it's a reality, it's a fact. But is it not again also an excuse not to change something? Because there are some samples in the industry where airlines are currently changing something. So, Steve, when you were reflecting what you were saying in your new not normal, and you would have now the task to set up a new airline in Canada, would you exactly do everything what has been done at your former airline, or would you do things differently with the learnings of the current COVID-19 situation?
So great question. And I think the most obvious answer is I would do things differently, but I would have done things differently if I could have started with a clean slate prior to COVID-19. And this just gives much more hard and fact to taking advantage of digital, taking advantage of AI, taking advantage of technology where and when possible. The challenge right now, and I think it was touched on a minute ago, is most senior executives in these organizations are simply trying to survive today. And I hate to use the word paralyzed, but they're somewhat paralyzed as to what the next step is. You've got a lot of global inconsistencies, as we talked about last week, in how we're going to reopen. What is wave 2 is there a wave 2? What does it mean? When does it come? And how do you convince passengers to get back on airplanes? I think if somebody could at least come up with a synopsis as to how some of that would happen. In fact, just this morning here, I don't know if anybody had a chance to read it, but IATA published July's passenger traffic results. So in total, globally, there was almost 80% below where we were July last year, and internationally, it's about 92% below. So, there are very few carriers going to survive in the long run to do that. And I think, to be candid, Daniel, I think, that is the real challenge now is, do I spend money to change? Money that I don't have or I may not have next week. And for lots of, entrenched, large, we'll call them legacy carriers, it's very difficult because they have union work rules, they have other things, they have regulatory environments, and they have a whole, even an IT system infrastructure that is set up to support what they've been doing for, all of these years. I can tell you, Air Canada still runs a mainframe backbone that is core to everything they do. And to simply say, I'm going to throw that out and I'm going to start with a clean slate is not easy. And it's certainly not cheap.
But let's go back, say 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and tackling exactly these situations, and of course nobody can looking in the glass ball, but do you believe that many airlines would have a much easier or more relaxed situation in terms of cash flow by renovating their house earlier in order to cope with crisis situation? Or do you believe even having things done 5 years ago, 3 years ago, they wouldn't save money at the moment, or they wouldn't be more flexible, reactive on these ad hoc changes? Or do you see a positive effect by doing things more proactively in terms of renovating the environment and the house of the airline?
Daniel and Steve, I don't know. I mean, if you take this up, and I'm being now a bit proactive. If I look at the big shows where they were showing aircrafts the past few years, everybody was signing for new aircrafts. And if I take a 737-900, costs around 100 million for one aircraft, and you sign up the books for 20, 30 aircrafts because everybody's believing in growth. And from a cargo perspective, a 5 years contract for a carrier who operates around 1 million shipments a year is about 10 to 15 million. So where's the comparison? I mean, this is something I really don't get it, that it's too expensive to invest into a new IT system. It's not. We are investing into assets. We spend a lot of money on these assets, or have spent a lot of money on these assets, and we never got to the soul of it. I mean, flying aircrafts, moving them around with passengers, of course, generates money. But the real money is actually earned on the ground with efficiencies, with new systems, with big data, analytics, whatever. I mean, all of this was missed only to buy new aircraft. And this is what I don't get. I mean, honestly, I spoke in the last few weeks actually with several specialists, for example, in the cargo space, and they all said, all the carriers who invested in their digital landscape prior to COVID on the cargo side are them who are really earning money now at the moment.
Yeah, but I agree also with you, Christian, because I think one of the things is that what airlines should have done as well with cash is to make acquisition. They were all focusing on acquisition and consolidation. Yeah. After that, if you look over the past 50 years, we kept on downsizing airlines. And the next step is that the airline will not even know about a customer, because when you talk about IT solutions, CRM means can't remember me, because you don't even know why the passenger is flying. And airlines, I think sometimes it's a question of a culture of ego, it's a pilot's world. So we believe we do a great job compared to the rest of the people. You know, I'm now sitting with boring researchers all day long who are passionate with mathematics. But when you work for an airline, you know, there is an ego which is very strong. It's a money does not count, because when you buy aircraft, it's like when you go buying a mattress or a car. You negotiate because it's a duopoly. The guys from Airbus, and I did a training with them, the salespeople, a few years ago, and I told them, you go to a mattress shop, and the way you negotiate, you just talk about discount, but as IT, they don't talk about value. So, and now what's the value of an aircraft? I don't know.
What
Should
is
you
the
buy
value
one or lease one?
which still operates with a 3.5 Zoll disk drive, actually, to upload data into a 747 or anything? I'm just thinking about this, and you know, I mean, the industry needs to somehow survive, and we are all in this together, as we all said, and I fully get it. But all the money spent in the past years is now parked actually in the deserts of this world.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be actually so strict in this case. I mean, yes, there is a big discrepancy between the investment into the aircraft and into the everything else. But I think we also have to look into this consolidation process. And especially for me, coming from a small airline, you know, you have to reach certain size that all those investments even make sense to you. And we were too long running in the world where we have a lot of really small airlines, but it started on the commercial side, that they were less and less able to influence the pricing and less compete with the others. And the same thing is coming with some delay to the operation, or was coming, you know. So I guess it's not fair to say, well, they didn't invest. It's actually just from the certain size you become a player who is forced to do something internally. But at least in Europe, we were caught somehow in the middle of this process. And you could see it in the US that they are a little bit farther. If you look into what Delta or American Airlines are doing internally and how their operational research is running, there you could see first signs that they realize that something is necessary to change. So that's like one layer, I would say. And the other layer goes behind us internally, because that's my big trouble with the aviation industry. And the bigger airline you are, the worse it is. And that's how people rotate around, you know, that we, not only in the departments, we create the silos, but actually we have people who are proud that they have spent 45 years with Lufthansa, Air France, American Airlines, whoever. But what's the consequence of it? You have your small shell, and that's your world, and you don't even acknowledge that there is any tangible world behind it. So I think this is also something what might change now, actually.
And you have a comment on that?
Yes, I do. Actually, a very, very good point there, Martin. I think it's a problem that people stay a very long time, and there is this great pride in, like you say, I've spent 45 years with Lufthansa. It's very problematic. But I also want to say that, I mean, I've worked for many traditional network airlines, and they are in silos, right? They do believe in this the way they do their business very much, and I've noticed that something that is not sexy in all these airlines, and to me, you know, it's like 15 of them. It's the same every time. You know, they are not interested in IT, in airline IT. They're definitely not interested in distribution, which is a huge cost to an airline. I recall in Lufthansa, I think it's €1 billion. And the only innovation I've ever seen is typically, traditionally, with low-cost airlines, or I actually hate the word low-cost airlines. To me, I think that's probably one thing we'll see from this pandemic. I think we're going to emerge just having airlines rather than, you know, grouping them into low cost or whatever. But the only customer centricity that I truly see, and I've actually, you know, now seen it with Wizz and having travel banks and having really sensible customer centric products, those are the guys who do it, not the traditional airlines. This is, you know, in my opinion.
Having worked for one of them, I fully agree. And there is actually a bit of hope for myself, even though it might hurt the legacy airlines a lot. But at least on the European side, I don't know if you noticed, Ryanair yesterday announced that they are going once again into the €5 ticket, and they really want to drive the consolidation. And I mean, I don't know what's the quality of the IT in the Ryanair, that I cannot comment at all, but by applying the external pressure, there is some hope on my side that the other European players will just have to follow, you know, because again, and I mentioned it, Daniel, already last time, now we can fool ourselves. The traffic is slow and there is actually no need to do anything. But once we are in this new state, whatever it is, then again, it will be run after the efficiency, and only the most efficient will survive.
Well, don't you think, Martin, that actually this crisis has proven which carriers are deficient and where the things are going wrong, actually?
I think it's still hard to say, because all those governmental programs supporting the airlines, you know,
Yeah.
If you look at it.
Us taxpayers need to pay for the mismanagement of the past. I'm sorry being a bit.
Yeah, well, might be part of it, but I think we will really see only once it restarts a little bit who is in what position, because at the moment, really, if it was the previous crisis, we would have been already 30 airlines less. And how many went bankrupt since the start of this crisis? 2, 3, which is just not normal.
Yeah, because there's a lot of state aid underway. So when I'm seeing how much money Germany paid to keep Lufthansa alive, Air France, and so on, and at the end, these airlines cannot even use this money to stimulate the business. So that's why I think without all these state aid, you would have potentially more collapses already mentioned in the news.
Okay.
Jasenka, your big topic is costs and disruptions. And we have this big topic of EU 261, and airlines accept since many years that they're burning money because they cannot mitigate the effect on passengers and their network. What is your explanation? You were so many years in the industry that airlines were accepting to voluntarily burn these unplanned costs. What's your explanation for that?
If I can start with, the biggest problem is the information that leaders and strategists have in front of them when they make decisions, whether to expand, how much to expand, where to expand. That's the biggest problem, because those numbers that we see in executive reports are just linear data. It's aggregate data combined from those data provided from operations and the financial department, and even those data don't match properly. So if you want to expand, because everybody is expanded, the success is measured by expansion, because everything that is non-linear, which are cost, not expenses. Expenses are linear, but the cost involve people and their interactions and things like that. So if we look at that, so if you don't have any data, I don't blame those leaders, but this kind of decision making is actually dated back in 1950s, when the industry actually designed a standard for industry standards for our designs for how you manage costs, how you report on costs. So we have functional divisions in costs. So that's all we have, and know how department is. Fuel belongs to someone. These are responsibilities. And then all other costs, maintenance, crew costs, are allocated to the department, despite the fact that everything is interrelated. Just for example, if you have recorded the crew problem in a delay report that could be caused actually by unscheduled maintenance that was caused because of cost cutting on stock on spare parts, and that could be caused because airlines wanted to improve productivity, increase the utilization of aircraft, and then even when flying to the most congested areas, and so on. So what I want to say, this is the information leaders had when they made decisions was not just sufficient to make any good decision for the airline. I mean, for their sustainability. What they had to do to expand, success was measured by expansion. Investors would listen and look at your productivity and expansion, how much you expand, are you big, market share and things like that. And that's what caused over expansion and lower prices with legacy carrier. They actually went below what they can handle on cost side. The prices were too low to match low cost carriers, and they went into huge problem with that because load factors were so high. Now, another story are disruption and what you do with these people when flights are disrupted. But so no idea about the passengers. I mean, in any official report, no idea about real punctuality, because we can discuss it. I wrote a lot about it. They are not just accurate. So you don't have an idea about how your revenues are affected by these disruptions, which is another story. I wouldn't go into it. It can last forever. And so back to the cost, so revenue not known, real cost not known, how they change, why they change compared to our plans. So that's what drove the such a big expansion and congestion at airports, and mergers saved some airlines. That's very true. But mergers brought more complexity into decision making because they were not so, different people, different culture, different equipment, different IT. So that's what I think caused the problem until COVID. Now we have time to do something about it. And what is, what is just logical, you don't have to be very clever to see that this strategic thinking and strategic decision need to get close. They must now, because there is no history, no analysis to say we are going to predict this and that. They need to look at what is happening in real life, what's happening in operations. And this data has to be improved. I can talk later about it, what needs to improve on operational side. And of course, this technology allows visualization, everything, to see the real pain points. Is it the airport? Is it the relationship inside the airlines? It is lots of things you can just actually understand if you start looking. And now I'll jump into disruptions, because disruptions are only place where everything that's ever done actually comes together. The results of whatever airports were done, whatever ATC, service providers, airlines, it reflects in disruption. You can, I don't see them as negative. Once they happen, you can't do much about it, apart from taking disruption as the information about and knowing how to do that, of course, is another story. To take it and see what didn't work deeply from inside. What are the deeper causes of disruption? Not just those reported as a delay reports, but what are the causes of strategic reasons? Because it could be just insisting on expansion that just doesn't happen. I mean, or you lose so much money now, you can't afford to lose so much money. So it is the right time to see, all the airlines that are just try to do it, impulsive expansion, we can do it, and then pull back. One thing is market, but once you start flying, this is cost as well. And cost needs to be monitored and associated with everything else. And if you don't know your cost and how much your airlines can do, once you start flying, market, situation is another story, but you start to fly, you must know what is happening constantly, and that's only from preparation for real. So that's what I would say.
Talking about cost, Steve, Anne was saying, if I understood correctly, that innovation came primarily through low-cost airlines. Would you agree on that, that when it comes to airline operations and the day of ops, that low-cost airlines are more innovative than hub and spoke or legacy airlines?
Yeah, I would agree with that. But again, traditionally, they tend to be newer. They tend to be more focused on taking advantage of technology and efficiently, and they aren't burdened with a lot of the, I'll call them legacy, either contract rules or legacy systems. So there isn't that cost of change. So certainly that's fair. But I think it was Christoph made a point way back when, around around the investment, and again, there is investment happening in IT, but if you look at it, the industry average is somewhere around 5 or 6% of total revenues. You compare that to what is spent on, again, aircraft, and it's almost a he who has the biggest network wins game that the senior executives like to play. It's not about fortifying fortifying the foundation. I refer to it as, because as you look forward, I really and fundamentally believe that our way out of this has a huge technology piece to it. And that foundation, similar to the foundation of the house, if it's not solid, it could be the Achilles heel that stops some of those carriers from exiting this in a way. Because we will find our way through this. There will be relief, there will be help, there will be passengers will come back. To someone's earlier point, the question is when. Is it, but those investments that haven't been made in technology are going to hinder recovery here desperately.
But is it not really rather a myth that low-cost airlines are more innovative in terms of technology deployment? I give you a sample. A large Irish-based low-cost airline is using exactly the same technology like a large Canadian-based legacy airline. So there's no innovation. And I can give you other samples. Are they maybe more innovative in terms of unbundling, marketing, route structure, and how they organize their business? But in terms of technology, I would say I disagree that they are more innovative. So I'm always open to learn. Give me a sample of a low-cost airline which is very innovative in terms of technology. And
yeah, so I'll let Anne speak in just a sec, but just a rebuttal. That is one of 700 systems, my friend. Exactly. So I think we need to look at the bigger picture in the ecosystem, and then I think you will realize that's a very limited view of life. But in that particular example, you are correct.
Yeah, I fully, Steve, that is
in the airline operations. Wow, that is a big number.
Yeah, I mean that's so correct, Steve. I mean, it's not necessary, and it's not necessarily about the it's not it doesn't have to be all about the PSS. It's not about what, but it has a lot to do about simplicity, and the way you work. You know, I'll give you an example. I've worked for a low-cost airline that used to be very profitable. At the time when I worked there, it was very profitable. And, you know, we did things like allowing, we were allowing people to travel. If I had a return ticket, you could use your inbound, you know, your return actually before your outbound. We didn't care about the, you know, everything was very customer centric. We had, you could just really walk up to the gate. If there was a seat available, you could fly. I mean, I'm talking about an enormous customer focus. So it's not necessarily what systems that are behind that, but it's the way you truly use them to the advantage of the customer. And then, of course, you know, the more you can do digital, the more you can simplify. You know, the more you can do on a website that is customer friendly. That is fun. I see customer websites today that just make me cry. I mean, they literally make me cry, and you don't think, you know, you can't even imagine that this is 2020 and this is an airline. And this is a great thing, I think, coming from COVID, or what we will see is this digital transformation. I mean, I've come across, you know, airlines who've said, no, we don't have any people working remote. Well, I think that tune is going to change now.
So Christine, Martin, and Christoph, you raised your hand. Maybe Christine, ladies first.
Thank you. So we're all concerned with cost, and that makes sense because, I mean, Air Canada, when I left, they were burning $22 million a day-ish, give or take. And yes, all of the beautiful aircraft on the ground are doing nothing but incurring cost. You know, they still have to be maintained. They're not gaining revenue. But the beauty of this, and I, as a person who, you know, left my dream job, I have to look at the beauty of this period of time as an opportunity, because there is less noise. The pandemic lowered our traffic. It lowered the noise in the operation. It lowered the same skeleton crew still has to be there. There's still a line maintenance. There's still an engine maintenance. There's still all network planning. Everyone's still there. But perhaps they can use this time to examine the silos. I literally heard silo my first day in the company. My first director was Tom Leapins, who just retired. He was a Transport Canada guy, Canadian Air. And he told me, you're going to hear the word silos a lot. And for 20 years, I heard that bloody word. And at one point, I said, we need to synergize the silos. That literally never took off, pardon the pun. But it was my belief, and it still is my belief, that if we have time, if we have the people, and my former department still exists, they're called operational excellence, within which you had business process managers, you have data scientists. Their titles are not such, but that's really what they're doing. For example, a year and a half ago, Air Canada was looking at weekly and monthly reports that were static. They were Excel spreadsheets. They created the business intelligence group within Ops Excellence, and within less than a year, they had any number of web-focused reports that were interactive. I mean, I never thought I would understand anything like that, but I was told by some of the youngsters that I got it more than some of the others. I just dreamed up, what about critical flights that incur costs when there are delays? How do we identify those? Because I wanted to be able to dig into the data. So I'm making a point. One of the things that my team had already started doing, oh my God, 8 months ago, was looking at the end-to-end process of an aircraft turn. How many business units are involved in an aircraft turn? Almost everybody. You've got people, you've got IT, you've got network planning, you've got in-flight flight ops, maintenance, cargo, health and safety, you've got dangerous goods, everything. And I used to say we, now I say they, we're slowly getting to everybody and validating the data. We built a giant map that you'd need like 3 screens to look at it on. But the beautiful part about this map is that every time we showed it to a different department, they all went, oh my God, that's what we've needed for so long. I saw a change in my former manager, Keith Dugas. He and I both saw something that we've never seen in my 20 and his 12 years. There is a possibility to break down the silos. You just need the people to walk through the weeds to each department and Steve knows exactly what I'm talking about, and get to those processes, highlight those processes. I made some notes while I was talking. Basically, identify
but Christine, if you are simplifying a process, does it mean some of these stakeholders have to give up a bit from their local kingdoms?
No, absolutely not. Each and every stakeholder is still required because each and every activity still needs to happen. What they didn't realize, and I've spoken about this on previous calls, simple examples like network planning, innocently planning a flight into, I'll say, Des Moines, Iowa, and not realizing that our Senior VP of Operations has required that whenever we fly into a new destination, we make sure we have wheels there. Obvious, right? But he wanted to make sure we had two wheels. You change one, you change the other. So unbeknownst to network planning, there was a department within maintenance called allotments. They need to know that we are going to, in 9 months' time, be flying into a new destination so that they can have the wheels available, the parts available. They'll either have the wheels on site or they'll join a parts pool. It's as simple as a conversation. And I learned that in an off-the-cuff conversation with my friend who used to do allotments, brought it into a meeting 30 minutes later to network planning, and taught them something that they didn't know because no one took the time to tell them. So you need the business process people who dig into the details. As you can see, I'm slightly passionate. And you need each and individual stakeholder group, and Black, because she understands. You need you obviously need fewer of them. You know, the airline was 38,000. They had to sever 30 or 22,000 of us. Some of them happily will go back when the traffic raises within the maintenance group, within the unionized group. Some of us will never go back. But the fact remains is that those processes, those synergies, those pain points, those opportunities for improvement still exist. So this time, this quiet time, if I, God, really hope that they're doing it, they are still persisting and moving forward and validating this beautiful end-to-end map and creating new web focus reports to highlight the issues to then bring it to the executives and show them, look, this is what we need. And every time I see a web focus report show to someone who doesn't know the area, as long as you speak their language, the light bulbs go off and a big smile goes on their face. So yes, money's being burnt, but there's still so much opportunity. There's so much that still can be done because they have to. They can't just give up and roll over. Air Canada's not going bankrupt. It's not going to happen. Other airlines have not been so fortunate, but Air Canada walked into 2020 in the best financial situation possible. You know, I still look at their postings every day. Oh, look, they're hiring cybersecurity. Oh, look, they're hiring management emergency planning. They're still there. They still exist. So processes, my friends, are really, really important. And everyone still needs to be there and participate and break down those blaze silos. There's no reason for them. We shouldn't hide information. We should share it with pleasure. And I will mute myself now because I'll keep talking otherwise.
Gabriela, you have a comment on this, on processes, changes.
Yes, and it was very interesting what Anne said, because currently in Latam, our biggest challenge is to simplify. Well, we expect to reduce maybe 30 or 40% because of the crisis, and I could see the leaders who remain after 6,000 lays off since July, and that leaders are really focused on the same objective to reduce our costs. And sometimes Latam seems like two different companies, because currently there are two different OCCs in the same company, and believe in the past there were 6 different OCCs. So after 8 years with hard work in trying to unify the process and the systems, we are more close to unify, but there are so many work to do. And but I believe the crisis is making that teamwork more efficient, with all our leaders focus on the same goal. In the past few days, I was happy to hear discussions like which one of those crew members is cheaper to fly because we have crew members from 6 different subsidiaries with different unions. And every time before the crisis that we started to discuss about it, it was a completely mess because no one wanted to change the behavior and to change the flights that each subsidiary operated. So, and another thing is currently we started to think, do we need all those different types of aircrafts because we fly Airbus and Boeing? And I believe that this reorganization in the hierarchy of the company has a great participation in this transformation of the behavior of the leaders and the current mindset to change for what we need to change.
So you are saying you see positive samples in the industry that a new mindset is settling down and now things are possible which were not possible in the past.
Yes, absolutely.
Good. Martin and Christoph, you have raised your hand.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I've a lot of good points. I've made so many notes that I don't want to comment on all of them. Actually, having worked really long for the low-cost carriers, I don't even understand why people don't understand that simplicity is the #1 thing. And I really like their question whenever you came to the manager at the time and you were like, yeah, let's do this or that. And their primary question was like, why? What's our benefit? You know, will we really, or will someone benefit out of that? Or are we doing it just because we think this is the right thing to do? And so that's one thing. Then on like if they are better in how they use the IT, I mean, they are slightly better how they use Excel. That's, I think, because they employ younger people. So yes, if we consider Excel as the backbone of the low-cost carriers, then
Thank you, Martin.
It might be, but you know, Daniel, that I'm also very often asking the question if it's something what doesn't go also behind the providers, because in the end they want ideally to buy something off the shelf. And I remember several tenders where the airlines were coming up in the end with, okay, let's stay maybe even with the old system because whatever was presented to us is not step enough into the future, and we spend like 5 years implementing it and the result will be kind of negligible. So that's one point which I wanted to make. And the other point which Gabriela mentioned, I also see it with many airlines that nowadays this decision making is really much more agile and it looks relatively good. My big fear is how it will be transferred back to the reality once the operations scale up, because at the moment, in my opinion, one part of this decision making, why it works now, is that actually now here in Germany, majority of the people are on the so-called Kurzarbeit, and it's managers who are actually managing the things. So they somehow actually, yeah, they have the decision making power, right? But once it goes back to the normal scale operations, once the managers get detached, I hope that they will still remember a little bit from this exercise how the things are working. But it's a bit of my fear. How will they react afterwards? And if we will be able to delegate this power to the normal people and in the scale we need, because now if 3 people need to talk, fair enough. But once we full-fledged mega OCCs with like 10, 15 decision makers, let's see.
Christoph, you're muted.
Not muted anymore, sorry. Yeah, I think, Christine, you made a very interesting point about data science organization. I was talking a few months ago to a French airline who wants to do research and development to predict fuel consumption or fuel cost, you know, this kerosene price and so on, hedging. It's a major French airline. I will not quote their name. And the guy, I told him, can I get data, fuel data? He said, no, it's confidential. And that was the first step I got. And they don't even share data with their Dutch partner. because everybody's cheating around. So first point about data. And when we talk about distribution, and I recognize you, we know each other from SAS.
Yes, we do. Yes, I recognize you too, Christophe. Really nice to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to see you again. And I did talk last year with a CEO of an airline in the UK. He's an ex-Sabre guy. He's the CEO of a major airline in the UK. And I told him, how are your distribution costs structured? Because before you used to pay Amadeus or Sabre, and it was a fatality. You had to pay this guy a huge amount of money. Now you got to pay a little bit to Google, a little bit to everybody. And he told me, it's difficult to know about my distribution budget because it's spread it between marketing, between distribution, between different departments, and I got no fucking clue on how much money I will spend. And it reminds me, TV advertising. You used to buy advertising on 2 channels before. Now you got to buy advertising on multiple channels with very low audience. So when
Christophe, that was the first time that we have to put a beep in one of the comments of the attendees. I have to work.
You put a what?
A beep. I have to beep one of your words.
Oh,
Was?
sorry about that. My English is very bad. Ich kann es in Deutsch sagen.
Sag's in Deutsch.
I don't think it gets better in German. No.
And I think, Martin, you made a very interesting point as well about low-cost carriers. So while Air France is not able to tell anything about cost of fuel, my best friend is a pilot at EasyJet. He's a captain. He joined EasyJet from Etihad, so he's been hired as a captain. Air France proposed him to hire him as a first cadet officer because he doesn't know about anything. He's been flying 25,000 hours. He told me at EasyJet, I know load factors. I'm interested in getting commercial information because I'm transporting passengers. And my other friend, I'm flying with him on a glider. It's flying a lot, actually, because he's a 380 captain at Air France, so they don't have aircraft anymore. And for him, the load factor is only about kilos and weight and balance. They do not have any passenger information. So when we talk about maybe, and Gabriela, you said some changes are coming, and I think a very positive thing around that is that why Air France bought 380s. Over the past 15 years, we've been figuring why the CEO made this decision, because it was for political reasons. And we've been asking, because we love our job, we are passionate with the aviation, why did these guys make these decisions? And now with COVID, we just realized that they stopped all these decisions, things getting back maybe to a new normal, which might be a bit more rational and conventional. And just to summarize, when you talk to you visit the chairman at Air France, he's got a private lift. I don't know if it's the case for Ben. So you cannot do a pitch elevator, because at Sabre, I've been told you need to do a pitch elevator, but I could not do that because he's got a private lift. So you will never meet him on the lift.
You will never do an elevator pitch.
But if you meet Rakesh Gangwal with the vice chairman or main shareholder of Indigo, when you shake Rakesh's hands, you know, this guy is very greedy. He would negotiate everything. And the sales guy of Airbus told me, when you shake his hand, you need to recount your fingers because he knows about money. So that's what I wanted to say.
Christian, you have also a comment.
Yeah, just a few comments actually, which I wanted to. I mean, somebody was saying, or we said up front, that low-cost carriers are technology leaders. If you compare the time they've been in the business with the usual carriers like Lufthansa or Qantas, like just over 100 years or something like that. I mean, you need to consider, when I enter a market at a later stage, I start with the existing technology. And that's perhaps where the advantage comes from. And that's why the old carriers, they didn't invest. Why should I change my technology? It's working, it's running, it runs my operation. I fully get this. But where I wanted to come from, and this is something actually Martin just mentioned, there's a big carrier we just implemented, and that's our real figures. We replaced 96 systems down to 10 to operate their cargo. And 10 years ago, they had their own system, etc., built. And 10 years ago, they took the decision. They had an RFP out. They wanted a new system, but they said, for what we want to achieve, the technology is not there. So they pushed back. And then 5 or 6 years later, they did. And then finally, we got chosen because the technology is there. But if you really look out there nowadays, and I mean, I'm coming from the industry. I work for airlines. I work for the International Air Transport Association, driving these initiatives. Ever since I was working for technology providers, it opened my eyes, and I was just asking my question. I mean, all the stuff I learned. I mean, I learned to fill in a paper ticket when I did my air traffic administrator. I learned to fill in an airbill, but all these kinds of things. And now I'm 18 years later, or even 10 years ago, it was possible to do this all electronic. So that's what I'm not getting, actually. And I mean, we also said that, okay, aircrafts or opening new routes are the toys of the CEOs. But, you know, I love my iPhone. That's my toy, and that's technology. And I think also, and managers who do their job right want to have data to drive decisions and that. So I think, I don't know. There can't be any excuse in investing into new technologies now or tomorrow or even before the crisis. There is none. It's not understandable why they haven't done.
So Martin, which is the best convincing excuse you ever heard from an airline not to invest into technology?
Well, the best excuse, that's hard to say. I mean, usual excuse is it's just too complex, right, to replace it. So let's rather leave it as it is than to change something. But I wanted to make last note on the low-cost carriers, and that's not to kind of promote them, but like, what's the main difference? And that comes a little bit to the mindset, right? Like, in my opinion, the big difference is that they look to what is happening around them, while the traditional players are more focused into the internal view, like how great they are, but they somehow forget to compare them from time to time with the external world. And this is what we already discussed during the past calls, like what kind of people we need, and at least for our group, what kind of people we need in the operations. You know, do we have the right profiles of the people? Do we educate, train people in the right way? Because they have to learn it somehow, and especially if they are working in the legacy silo airline, it's as much as I would want to blame them, how do you want to blame them? You know, they don't know.
But does it mean that you would like to shift some low-cost airline employees to the legacy airlines with this work, or would they never like to work for such a legacy airline because they just want to work for a low-cost airline?
I mean, that's an interesting idea, which how the cultural clash looks like, you might see in unnamed Irish airline, which purchased unnamed Austrian ex-legacy airline. And the cultural clash there was so great that actually they more or less dismissed everyone in Austria and transferred all the operations into Ireland, because it was really completely different worlds, and the people didn't understand, like, and I understand it. Coming from small airline, I understand this approach. We think we are great and we are able to manage everything. But on the other hand, as Christine was talking about, the processes, you know, and systematic structured framework, people are somehow underestimating it. So sometimes really it's better, like I like to talk about flight planning, for example, as a production. Doesn't matter if you make the fourth automobiles or the flight plans, but it has to be, each of them has to be kind of same given the specifics, you know. And we need to match those worlds. At the beginning, I think it would be enough if people from the legacy airlines were rotating a little bit at least, but even this is, even in Europe, it's almost impossible. You want to join Air France from Lufthansa, you need to speak the language, you lose the seniority and all those perks, which makes our lives easier. make the airlines' lives worse.
Sounds a bit like a fight between Protestants and Catholics. So pretty much you either have the religious legacy of low cost, and is it then, because I don't know any low cost airline which has a strong union, is this maybe also key for changing things? Because I think also the sample of this Irish carrier taking over the Austrian branch, as you read a lot from the Austrian union representatives, what's not working and blah, blah, blah. Is this maybe then one of the obstacles to overcome?
You were asking me? Oh, well, I think it's, I really can't say about, I mean, of course we can notice that, you don't have the same union affiliation or the same background, but you don't have those many, 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 many years of history, right? That you will typically have in a traditional carrier. It's not really my expertise area, but what I'd like to add to what we were saying is that one problem I see with traditional carriers is that they never remove anything. They just add more stuff, more complexity on top of existing processes or systems. Like I believe it was Steve who said something about it's been there since the 70s. They will never, they will typically, look at you, and I've done big projects over in Asia and stuff, and they will say, oh yes, but we do need 55 code shares. And you kind of go, 55? So how much business do these represent? And then this will go, oh, that's so hard. Well, that will take me a week to dig out, that data. And then when you start looking at this data, of course, you can see that maybe 2 code shares actually bring in value or really represent big money or whatever. And then, of course, I hate code share, so I shouldn't really go there. It's one of my hate topics. But it's just an example. I'll give you another example. I came into one airline and I said, you've got 250 fare rules in ATPCO. And I actually came down to 16 when I organized all of that. And of course, a fare rule it's what you pay a bit of money for, right? So I actually saved them, I don't know, 15 grand or something like that to do it's no money. But, it's really interesting, the complexity that they will just not go away from, and they will, fight to the very bitter end of, protecting this. And I think it's the lack of a holistic view. That's also there. I can see others raising hands.
Gabriela, you raised your hand. Now it's put down.
Yeah, was wrong. Sorry.
So then, Christoph.
Mute. Christoph,
if you want to raise your voice, unmute yourself, please.
Sorry. Anne, you talked about a word for young people like us, ATPCO. ATPCO is something when I think the first time I was with Iberia, and they wanted to add ancillary services, and ATPCO does not make it possible. So when I go to the market, I buy tomatoes and I ask 1 kilo of cucumbers on top, everything is possible. So I think we created a world of process which is really complicated. When it comes to data and data science, in the aviation industry, we know everything because it's been like that for the past 40 years. So let's say that people who stay, and it's a pricing point as well, the night from Saturday to Sunday are leisure passenger, while the other are business passengers. So how do we cope with that with one-way tickets and so on? And when it comes to data science, if I would do data science, my interest is to try to identify correlations from a system perspective that I was not thinking about. But when I was talking to airlines on analyzing correlations they don't think about, the guys told me, no, we don't need that. We know about the business. And when I was, over the past 25 years, I've been asking 2 questions. Question number 1 is network planning and revenue management. Why do you guys use 2 types of forecast to forecast the same passengers, customers at the end. Because it's like that, because it's two departments, because it's two VPs. If you discuss with EasyJet, just one forecast, one VP. And then when it comes to flight ops versus scheduling, people who do like each other. And I remember Yasenka, we talked together about it at RM many years ago. Because you ask an airline executive, do you know the number of flights you disrupt versus what you planned? Only low-cost airlines would give you a response. Legacy airlines would tell you, no, the scheduling guys, they stretch so much the schedule that we cannot execute it. And the scheduling guy, commercial guys would tell you, oh, these guys are screwing everything. And finally, when it comes to distribution, it's the same thing, because nobody's got a clue of, I didn't pronounce a bad word now, Daniel. It was very close to it. Nobody has a clue of where the money sits, how much they spent. And the question is how, and if we had our friend ex-Iberia from Amazon on a few calls, and when she was I think Amazon, they exactly know what you will buy and when. Well, we don't have a real clue of why people travel. And I think it's a challenge for the aviation industry to be able to change that. And when you look at low-cost airlines, people talk together. There are processes, as you said, Christine, but also it's all about bringing back common sense, that people would talk and discuss, humanly speaking, because we did build so many IT process, and IT is important, but also we need to have IT which adapts to organization, which are getting leaner. And today it's still, we need to adapt the IT to organization for all these big airlines.
See, that's the beauty of what was going on in the last year or so. And again, I will not speak to IT, so you can do that much better than I, but from what I witnessed, and using your revenue management and network scheduling, talking between each other and not really understanding each other, that was the beauty of this end-to-end process, or examining. There was a flight that was taking off sometimes from Montreal connecting Vancouver onto Asia. And those types of flights were critical flights because they were costing super high sorry, I'm losing my words today. Customers were made late at the other end at their connection. So it was costing money in terms of connections. By figuring out that there were these critical flights, then we dug into which are they, where are they? Then we realized one of them was in Montreal, and that one was special to me because it was the people that physically sat down the hall for me. They were frustrated because network scheduling had shaved off about 10 minutes. There was an overnight in Montreal, okay, an overnight visit. There used to be, I'll say, an hour and 15 minutes to get it from the hangar to its takeoff flight in the morning. And the takeoff flights are obviously very important, focus flights. They shaved 10 minutes off. Those 10 minutes can easily be eaten up by traffic on the apron, because an aircraft that is going to a positioning flight does not have priority over an aircraft that's on the runway to depart. So sometimes they would have to literally wait 10, 15 minutes on the apron just to get to position to the aircraft. And then when you get to the aircraft to the gate, you have to cater it. Sometimes catering could be done at the hangar, sometimes it couldn't. There are all kinds of activities that had to happen at the gate. So again, by highlighting these pain points, discovering the pain point, talking about it, asking a bajillion questions. And again, it's people like me who are a pain in the ass. I said a bad word, Daniel. And ask the questions until you get an answer that makes sense, until someone keeps listening. And the greatest part of the last year was that people at all levels, up to and including the CEO, were starting to listen about the idea of business architecture, business process planning, and just talking to each other. It really is simple. It's simple. And I have to speak on behalf of the low-cost carrier that was grown within Air Canada from as of 2013. So it would have been 7 years flying on July 1st. I'm not actually sure if they're still flying. I've lost track of that. I had to distance myself from that. But they were using the same systems as Air Canada. They had unions. They were different. Their pilots and flight attendants were on a different union, but they're still unionized. So the same types of processes were there. I don't believe that there are any they were less hindered perhaps by cost because their flight attendants cost them less, their pilots cost them less. But what was great is that we also grew them within the airline. So you'd start off maybe as a flight attendant at Rouge, and then end up as an in charge, and then move over to the, the air operator. And we always had a great influx of new talent and growing talent. So there's things to be said on both sides. And Christophe, I think I know which airlines you're talking about over in France. I have an idea. Oh, please, someone else.
Martin, you raised your
It's
hand.
Canadian rule now.
Yeah, I mean, I would say with the unions, it doesn't really matter because it's more like if your company has a purpose and you are able to communicate it to your employees and to your unions, they are also not crazy. It's just that when you are all getting lost into who wants what, that's a little bit difficult. But more to those end-to-end processes, because I fully agree with Christine, and I'm actually really happy that the companies are starting to do it now. And that goes into my another favorite topic, which is kind of KPIs, because which KPIs are we using? On-time departure. Oh, great. Technical dispatch reliability, completely static KPIs, but what are they telling us? Nothing. So I'm really happy that even in Europe, it's more and more nowadays those softwares which allow you to do the proper data mining and then apply the learning in the planning phase at least. And that's, I would say, improving. Where it would be interesting to hear your opinion as a group would be like, how do we work with that then in the real-time operations, because while all these data visualizations are great when you have time to think what it means and merge the different data, once it comes to the ops control, it goes to good old firefighting. And the more under pressure you are, the less you are using visualization. They might be beautiful and priceless, whatever, but you just don't have time to think. And if they are just too separated, you don't have time to make the conclusion based on them. So you rather make the conclusion without them. Plus, of course, afterwards, and that would be also a question for you, like how many times have you seen the real feedback loop working in airline operations? Can at least someone give an example of the airline where it's working?
Gabriela, do you have already some experience on that? On Martin's comment on feedback loop and automating things?
Yes. Actually, I don't think we are changing our system. So, but we cannot reach better KPIs with the currently systems. So it is first of all, it is really difficult to the managers define what is the KPI that matters. Basically, for a long time we are only looking for the OTP, as Martin said, but now we are, for example, now the OCC area, we are looking to the impact that we cause in the other areas, like the second biggest cost of Latam Brazil is the let me find the words. Sorry. Okay, crew member salary of Latam Brazil is the second biggest cost for Latam Brazil. So we realized that we have to have a biggest impact of that. The way that we work, our choices, and that was our, let me check the correct word. It's out of our budget, is part of a budget of a different area. So this is an important KPI that we have to work on it, but we don't have So we are working in to define those kind of things. So we have what we need to look. Maybe it's something that there are impact in another area, not only in the OCC. So, but this is possible only. This is possible only after the crisis, because before of it, the manager didn't want to look for it.
So first Jasenka, then Steve, and then Anne.
Be very quick because we don't have much time left, isn't it? So when we talk about new mines, I just want to say that we should look at the Southwest Airlines, the most successful airline in the entire history. And if we look there, it is mostly about how they treat their employees, and then employees treat passengers, and what actually investors like, shareholders like. So this is, there are a lot of it in, you can find in a quote of Kelleher, the ex-CEO, very, very good, and just to cut it short, it's about connecting what I talked about previously, finding a way to connect strategy and operation, to work very closely with that, to be equipped with the right technology, because without it you can't, and without people that are in between, you can't do that. So that's what I suggest all of us to have in mind when we think about new mines.
Steve.
Yeah, quickly, 3 comments. Just on Southwest. The other thing I'll say, Yanka, is I did to spend some time with them. Simplification. They are fanatical about simplification, and whether it's the single fleet, how they run their airport operations. It's amazing how simple Southwest runs 800 plus airplanes. The other one was, we talked a lot about KPIs. So, I think one of the big problems that I've seen, and again, my experience will be at the Air Canada level, is shared KPIs. We've got 1,000,000,001 KPIs. Our chief commercial officer is all about revenue. Our chief operating officer is all about costs, right? And until you get that alignment, and not to say you can't, but I saw more debates, and as recently as going in March, it was button up your shoes. We're going after revenue. But chasing revenue is what caused many bankruptcies, because revenue at cost at a negative bottom line doesn't make any sense. The only other one is on data visualization and OCC, and I've spent many years on this topic, and it is a great theory at this point in time. But I'll share with you, and Daniel, you and I have had many conversations in this life and your former life around the need to pair crews with a maintenance schedule, with facilities, with passengers, those 4 things. So I challenge the IT providers on the call to solve one of those at a time, and then we'll solve the broader problem over time. So, and I'll end with that.
I think we can take this challenge on, and you will hear a lot of good things very soon about it. And
I'll be very quick then. I really want to echo that. Kudos to Southwest. And I was cracking up when I saw United announcing that they're not going to charge for change fees. And I thought, yes, finally. And then they said, oh, well, Southwest have been successful with this for years. And yes, that's very true. And one KPI that I would really like to bring into all of this is customer satisfaction. I don't know how to stress that. And I've spoken to airlines and I said, what do you do with your customer feedback? And I've actually heard airlines saying, well, you know, it's so complicated. We do read them, but yeah, kind of do anything with them? Well, and this is, and I personally, I have a lot of fun, you know, writing to airlines saying, oh, you know, this feature on your website, it really sucks. What do you plan to do about that? Yes, I know that was, well, it wasn't too bad of a word, but I really enjoy that. And I would say 95, 90, well, maybe 1% I would get an answer to. And no response. And then they actually have, you know, somebody taking time saying, this is really bad. This is how I suggest would be a great improvement. I don't do it all the time, but when I see obvious flaws, I do it. And so I'd love to say customer satisfaction. Maybe this can finally become important and relevant. So I'm really amazed because I think we can continue to talk. And I think I said earlier, we have a great lineup. It was an amazing discussion. And maybe we think about a second discussion in this frame. I will contact you and we will find a date if you agree on that. And some of you will be in one of the upcoming Virtual Ops 2020 sessions, which are already scheduled. So tomorrow we talk about schedule planning, integration, airline operations. We have our third aviation women panel this week. And next week we talk about building the bridge between airline operations and air cargo, and also talking about fatigue risk management. I think there are some people who suffer lockdown fatigue. Hopefully we can also help them with our Virtual Ops 2020 session. So thank you very much for all your great contribution. Also your smart, upbeat, positive, enthusiastic attitude. I think that's what the industry needs for a better future. And I wish you all to stay healthy and safe and have a great evening or rest of the day. And thank you again for your great comments. And yeah, talk to you soon again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.